What is India? An overview of the nation. India is a union of many worlds, a federal republic with strong regional identities, a fast-growing economy, and a civilization that keeps renewing itself. Daily life blends tradition and technology. Families still gather for festivals like Diwali and Eid, yet digital payments via UPI and grocery apps are routine even in small towns. English and Hindi serve as link languages, while Tamil, Bengali, Marathi, and many others shape local culture, media, and politics. Politically, elections are vast civic exercises. Parties stitch coalitions across caste, class, and region. The Election Commission manages logistics on a continental scale. Debates focus on jobs, inflation, welfare delivery, and how to balance rapid growth with social inclusion and civil liberties. Parliament, an active court system, and a noisy press create constant scrutiny, although arguments about free speech and misinformation are common. Economically, India mixes world-class IT and pharmaceuticals with agriculture and a huge informal sector. The India Stack, Aadhaar IDs, Jan Dhan bank accounts, and UPI has widened financial inclusion. Startups target education, health, and logistics, while Make in India aims to expand manufacturing and exports. Urbanization is reshaping skylines. Metros, expressways, and industrial corridors pull labor and capital toward new hubs. Culturally, India is plural and improvisational. Classical arts flourish alongside Bollywood and the IPL's cricket spectacle. Cuisine is intensely regional. Dosas, biryani, and thalis, yet vegetarian traditions remain influential. In short, India is a permanent conversation between memory and ambition, village and megacity, sacred time and startup time. To grasp India is to accept complexity and see diversity turned into a durable engine of change.
Geography of India, from Himalayas to coasts. India's geography is often described as a subcontinent in itself, stretching from the snow-clad Himalayas in the north to the tropical coastlines of the Indian Ocean. The Himalayan range acts as a natural barrier and a climatic regulator, shaping the monsoon system that sustains agriculture across the Indo-Gangetic plains. Major rivers such as the Ganga, Yamuna, and Brahmaputra originate in these mountains and form fertile alluvial belts that support dense populations and intensive farming. Moving southward, the Deccan Plateau dominates the peninsular region. Rich in mineral resources, it has contributed to India's industrial growth, especially in states like Karnataka and Telangana. The western and eastern Ghats run parallel to the coasts, influencing rainfall patterns and biodiversity. The Western Ghats, in particular, are recognized as a global biodiversity hotspot. India's coastline, extending over 7,500 kilometers, supports vibrant port cities such as Mumbai, Chennai, and Kochi. Maritime trade has historically linked India to Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. Coastal livelihoods depend on fishing, shipping, and tourism, while inland regions rely heavily on agriculture, livestock, and small-scale industries. Geography also shapes India's cultural diversity. Mountain communities, desert settlements in Rajasthan, and coastal societies in Kerala or Tamil Nadu have distinct cuisines, languages, and traditions. From the Thar Desert to the Sundarbans Delta, India's physical landscape directly influences patterns of settlement, economic development, and political priorities, including disaster management and water security. In essence, India's geography is not merely physical terrain, it is the foundation of its civilization and contemporary policy challenges.
Climate zones and monsoons. India's climate is best understood through its distinct zones and the annual monsoon cycle. In the north, the Himalayan region experiences severe winters and short summers, while the Indo-Gangetic plains shift from cool, foggy winters to extremely hot pre-monsoon months. Farther west, Rajasthan's Thar Desert has arid conditions with low rainfall and sharp temperature swings between day and night. Peninsular India is influenced by the surrounding seas, so coastal areas such as Kerala, Goa, and Tamil Nadu generally have a more moderate range of temperatures. However, humidity can be intense, especially during the rainy season. The Deccan interior, on the other hand, often faces hotter, drier spells, and some districts are prone to drought. The monsoon is not simply rain, it is a large-scale wind system that reverses direction. The southwest monsoon typically arrives around June, bringing moisture-laden winds from the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. These winds hit the western Ghats and cause heavy rainfall on the windward side, while the leeward areas may receive much less, creating rain shadow zones. In October and November, parts of the southeast coast rely on the northeast monsoon, which is crucial for crops in Tamil Nadu. Because so much farming depends on seasonal rainfall, a delayed or weak monsoon can affect food prices, rural incomes, and even electricity demand. That is why weather forecasts, water storage, and flood preparedness are major concerns in public administration and policy planning. In everyday life, monsoon season shapes everything, from school calendars and travel plans to festivals and household routines.
Air pollution in major cities. Air pollution has become one of the most pressing public health concerns in several major Indian cities. In metropolitan regions such as Delhi, Mumbai and Kolkata, levels of particulate matter, especially PM 2.5, often exceed national and international safety standards. During winter months, temperature inversion can trap pollutants close to the ground, leading to thick smog and reduced visibility. The sources of urban air pollution are complex and interconnected. Vehicular emissions, construction dust, industrial discharge, and the burning of agricultural residue all contribute to deteriorating air quality. Rapid urbanization and a growing number of private vehicles have intensified the problem. In some northern states, seasonal stubble burning in neighboring regions further aggravates pollution levels, affecting cities hundreds of kilometers away. The health impact is significant. Long-term exposure to polluted air increases the risk of respiratory diseases, cardiovascular conditions, and reduced lung capacity among children. Public health advisories frequently recommend limiting outdoor activities during high pollution days, especially for vulnerable populations. In response, the government has introduced measures such as the National Clean Air Program, stricter emission norms, promotion of electric vehicles, and expansion of metro networks. Civil society organizations and citizens are also advocating sustainable mobility, waste management reforms, and greater environmental accountability. While progress has been uneven, air pollution remains central to India's broader development and climate agenda.
Rivers of India and water management. Rivers have shaped the civilization, economy, and spiritual life of India for thousands of years. Major river systems such as the Ganga, Brahmaputra, and Indus have supported agriculture, trade, and settlement since ancient times. Even today, millions of people depend on these rivers for drinking water, irrigation, fishing, and religious practices. The Ganga, often regarded as sacred, flows across several northern states and sustains densely populated regions. In contrast, peninsular rivers such as the Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri are largely rain-fed and depend heavily on the monsoon. Because rainfall is uneven and seasonal, effective water management is essential for food security and rural livelihoods. India has constructed dams, reservoirs, and canal networks to regulate water supply and generate hydroelectric power. Large projects like the Bhakra Nangal Dam have played a key role in agricultural expansion. At the same time, these projects have raised concerns about displacement, ecological imbalance, and interstate river disputes. Water scarcity remains a growing challenge due to climate variability, groundwater depletion, and rapid urban growth. The government promotes initiatives such as river-linking proposals, rainwater harvesting, and watershed management programs. Sustainable water governance is increasingly viewed as critical for balancing development needs with environmental protection. In a country where rivers are both economic lifelines and cultural symbols, responsible water management is not only a policy priority but also a matter of national importance.
Biodiversity and wildlife protection. India is recognized as one of the world's mega-diverse countries, with ecosystems ranging from the Himalayan highlands to coastal mangroves and tropical rainforests. This biodiversity supports not only wildlife but also livelihoods through agriculture, fisheries, forest produce, and nature-based tourism. Iconic species such as the Bengal tiger, Asian elephant, and one-horned rhinoceros also carry cultural meaning and attract global attention. To protect this natural heritage, India has built a legal and institutional framework over decades. The Wildlife Protection Act and the creation of protected areas, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and biosphere reserves have helped conserve key habitats. Programs like Project Tiger strengthened anti-poaching measures and improved habitat management, while community-based efforts in some regions encourage people to protect forests and reduce conflict with animals. However, conservation is complex. Expanding infrastructure, land use change, and climate stress can fragment habitats, pushing animals closer to villages and farms. Human-wildlife conflict, such as crop damage or attacks, creates fear and financial loss, so solutions must include compensation, early warning systems, and safer land planning. Another challenge is illegal wildlife trade, which requires better enforcement and public awareness. In recent years, policy discussions have increasingly emphasized coexistence and the idea that conservation cannot succeed without local communities. When protection is combined with fair livelihoods, science-based monitoring, and transparent governance, biodiversity becomes a shared asset rather than a distant ideal. In a country as large and varied as India, wildlife protection is not just about saving animals, it is about protecting ecosystems that sustain everyday life.
Renewable energy in India. Renewable energy has become a central pillar of India's development strategy. As one of the world's fastest-growing major economies, India faces rising energy demand from industry, transport, and households. At the same time, the government has committed to reducing carbon intensity and expanding clean energy capacity under its international climate obligations. India has made significant progress in solar and wind power. Large-scale solar parks in states such as Rajasthan and Gujarat have transformed arid land into productive energy hubs. Rooftop solar installations are also being promoted in urban areas through policy incentives and net metering mechanisms. Wind energy projects along the coasts of Tamil Nadu and Gujarat contribute substantially to the national grid. The International Solar Alliance, headquartered in India, reflects the country's diplomatic initiative in climate cooperation. Hydropower and bioenergy continue to play supportive roles, especially in rural electrification. At the same time, the transition to renewable energy must address challenges such as grid stability, energy storage, and financing. Renewable energy is not only an environmental necessity, but also an economic opportunity. It creates employment, encourages domestic manufacturing under initiatives like Make in India, and reduces dependence on imported fossil fuels. In this context, India's energy transition represents a strategic balance between sustainability, growth, and energy security.
Nuclear energy and public debate in India. Nuclear energy has long occupied a complex place in India's development strategy. From the early years after independence, policymakers viewed nuclear power as a way to secure long-term energy security and reduce dependence on imported fossil fuels. Today, nuclear plants contribute a relatively small share of total electricity generation, yet they remain symbolically important in national planning. Supporters argue that nuclear energy provides stable baseload power without direct carbon emissions, making it relevant in the context of climate change and India's commitment to reduce the emissions intensity of its economy. Unlike solar and wind, nuclear reactors operate continuously and are less affected by weather variability. For a country with rising energy demand, this reliability is often highlighted in official discussions. However, nuclear energy is also the subject of public debate. Concerns have been raised about safety standards, radioactive waste management, and the long-term environmental impact of large-scale projects. Protests around certain plant sites reflect anxieties among local communities regarding land acquisition, livelihood disruption, and disaster preparedness. International incidents have also shaped public perception. In recent years, India has pursued both indigenous reactor designs and international cooperation under civil nuclear agreements. The debate continues to balance technological ambition with social consent, demonstrating how energy policy in India is not only technical but also political and ethical.
Space Science and ISRO. India's space program, led by the Indian Space Research Organisation or ISRO, has become a major source of national pride. Established in 1969, ISRO was built on the idea that space technology should serve developmental needs. Unlike purely military space programs, India's early focus was on communication, weather forecasting, and remote sensing to support agriculture, disaster management, and rural connectivity. Over the decades, ISRO has achieved several milestones. The launch of the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle or PSLV demonstrated India's ability to place satellites into precise orbits at comparatively low cost. The Mars Orbiter mission, known as Mangalyaan, in 2013 drew global attention because India reached Mars on its first attempt, highlighting cost efficiency and engineering capability. More recently, missions such as Chandrayaan have expanded India's role in lunar exploration, while the Gaganyaan program aims to send Indian astronauts into space. These projects reflect both scientific ambition and geopolitical aspiration. Space achievements are often presented as symbols of technological self-reliance or Atmanirbhar Bharat. At the same time, public discussions sometimes question budget priorities in a country that still faces socio-economic challenges. However, supporters argue that investment in space science generates innovation, skilled employment, and international collaboration. In India, space science is therefore not only about exploration but also about development, identity, and strategic positioning in the global arena.
Science education in India. Science education in India has long been viewed as a pathway to social mobility and national development. From an early stage, students are introduced to mathematics and basic sciences through a standardized curriculum, often shaped by national boards such as CBSE and state education boards. Competitive examinations play a central role. Entrance tests like JEE and NEET determine admission to premier engineering and medical institutions, and preparation for these exams has created a vast ecosystem of coaching centers across cities like Kota and Hyderabad. India's emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics reflects its aspiration to become a knowledge economy. Institutions such as the Indian Institutes of Technology (IITs) and the Indian Institutes of Science Education and Research (IISERs) are globally recognized for academic excellence. At the same time, policymakers are attempting to reform the system through the National Education Policy 2020, which encourages interdisciplinary learning, critical thinking, and research orientation. However, disparities remain between urban and rural schools, especially in laboratory facilities and digital access. The expansion of online learning platforms and government initiatives like Diksha aim to bridge this gap. In contemporary India, science education is not only about securing employment, it is also about fostering innovation, scientific temper, and informed citizenship in a rapidly changing society.
A brief history of modern India. Modern India's story is shaped by colonial rule, the struggle for independence, and the building of a democratic republic. In the 18th century, the British East India Company gradually expanded its control, and after the revolt of 1857, India came under direct British Crown rule. Colonial administration introduced railways, a modern bureaucracy, and English education, but it also led to economic exploitation and political exclusion. In the early 20th century, a broad-based nationalist movement emerged. Leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi advocated non-violent civil disobedience, while others demanded more radical reforms. After decades of protests, negotiations, and sacrifices, India achieved independence in 1947. However, independence was accompanied by partition, which created India and Pakistan and led to large-scale migration and communal violence. In 1950, India adopted a constitution that established a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Under leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, the country pursued planned economic development and a policy of non-alignment during the Cold War. In the decades that followed, India faced wars, internal political challenges, and economic difficulties, including the emergency of 1975 to 77. A major turning point came in 1991 when economic liberalization opened markets and encouraged private enterprise. Since then, India has emerged as a major global player in technology, services, and geopolitics. Today, modern India continues to balance rapid growth with social justice, federal diversity, and democratic debate.
British colonial rule and its impact. British colonial rule in India began gradually through the East India Company and later shifted to direct Crown administration after 1858. What started as trade eventually turned into territorial control. The colonial state introduced railways, telegraph lines, modern courts, and a centralized bureaucracy. English education created a new middle class that would later lead the nationalist movement. At the same time, colonial policies reshaped India's economy to serve British industrial interests. Traditional industries such as handloom weaving declined due to the influx of British manufactured goods. Agriculture was reorganized around cash crops like indigo, cotton, and opium, often at the expense of food security. Heavy land revenue systems placed a burden on peasants, contributing to famines in the 19th century. Economic drain became a major theme in nationalist criticism. Politically, Indians had limited participation in governance. Although legislative councils were introduced, real power remained with British officials. Socially, colonial rule both reinforced and reinterpreted identities through censuses and legal classifications. At the same time, reform movements emerged, addressing issues such as education, caste discrimination, and women's rights. By the early 20th century, dissatisfaction had grown into a mass movement for self-rule. British colonial rule thus left a complex legacy: modern institutions and infrastructure on one hand, and deep economic and social inequalities on the other. Its impact continues to shape debates about development, governance, and historical memory in contemporary India.
Independence and partition. India's independence in 1947 is often remembered as a moment of national pride, but it was also marked by partition and immense human suffering. After decades of mass mobilization, led by the Indian National Congress alongside many other groups, the British government agreed to transfer power. At the same time, political negotiations became increasingly tense over how a new nation should be structured and how minorities would be protected. The demand for a separate homeland for Muslims gained strength under the Muslim League, and the idea of dividing British India into two dominions, India and Pakistan, moved to the center of the final settlement. The partition plan was implemented quickly, with borders drawn by the Radcliffe Line. Communities that had lived together for generations suddenly found themselves on opposite sides of a new boundary. The result was one of the largest migrations in modern history. Millions of people crossed borders in both directions, often leaving behind homes, land, and livelihoods. The period also saw widespread communal violence, including attacks on trains and refugee convoys. For many families, partition became a lifelong memory of loss, trauma, and displacement. Independence also meant the task of nation-building, drafting a constitution, integrating princely states, and creating institutions that could hold together a diverse society. In India today, Independence Day is celebrated with ceremony and patriotism, while partition is remembered through stories, memorials, and continued debates about identity, borders, and reconciliation.
Building a new nation. When India became independent in 1947, freedom was only the beginning. The country faced the enormous task of building a new nation out of diversity, displacement, and uncertainty. Leaders such as Jawaharlal Nehru and B.R. Ambedkar understood that political independence had to be followed by institutional stability and social reform. One of the first major achievements was the drafting of the Constitution, which came into force in 1950. It established India as a sovereign, democratic republic and guaranteed fundamental rights such as equality before the law, freedom of expression, and protection against discrimination. At the same time, the Constitution created a federal structure, balancing powers between the union government and the states. Another urgent challenge was the integration of more than 500 princely states into the Indian Union. Through negotiation and in some cases decisive action, these territories were gradually incorporated. Economic planning also became central to nation building. The government adopted 5-year plans to promote industrialization, infrastructure development, and self-reliance. Education, public sector enterprises, and scientific institutions were expanded to lay the foundations for long-term growth. Despite poverty, food shortages, and regional tensions, democratic elections were held regularly, reinforcing India's commitment to constitutional governance. Building a new nation was not a single event but an ongoing process. It required compromise, vision, and resilience. Even today, debates about federalism, social justice, and development reflect the unfinished project of nation building that began in the years after independence.
The Indian Constitution explained. The Constitution of India, adopted in 1950, is often described as the backbone of the world's largest democracy. It is one of the longest written constitutions in the world, reflecting the complexity and diversity of Indian society. Drafted by the Constituent Assembly under the chairmanship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, it provides the legal and institutional framework for governance. The Constitution begins with the preamble, which declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. It promises justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity to all citizens. These values guide the interpretation of laws and public policy. One of the most important sections deals with fundamental rights. These rights guarantee freedom of speech, equality before the law, protection against discrimination, and the right to constitutional remedies. Citizens can approach the courts if they believe their rights have been violated. At the same time, the Constitution outlines fundamental duties, reminding citizens of their responsibilities toward the nation. India follows a federal structure with a strong central government. Powers are divided between the Union and the states through Union, State, and concurrent lists. The Constitution also establishes an independent judiciary headed by the Supreme Court to ensure checks and balances within the system. Over the decades, the Constitution has been amended many times to respond to social, political, and economic changes. Yet its core principles, democracy, rule of law, and respect for diversity continue to shape the Indian Republic.
Democracy in the world's largest democracy. India is often described as the world's largest democracy, not only because of its population size, but also due to the scale and complexity of its electoral processes. With over 900 million eligible voters, general elections in India are a massive administrative exercise conducted by the Election Commission of India, an autonomous constitutional authority. Elections are held at multiple levels: national, state, and local. The Lok Sabha elections determine the composition of the central government, while state legislative assemblies form state governments. India follows a parliamentary system where the Prime Minister is the head of government and is typically the leader of the majority party or coalition in the Lok Sabha.
One of the remarkable features of Indian democracy is its inclusiveness. Universal adult franchise was granted from the very beginning in 1950, irrespective of caste, gender, religion, or economic status. This was a bold and progressive step for a newly independent nation. However, Indian democracy also faces challenges. Issues such as electoral funding, misinformation, identity politics, and voter polarization are subjects of ongoing debate. At the same time, civil society, an independent judiciary, and a vibrant media ecosystem contribute to democratic accountability. Despite its imperfections, India's democratic system remains resilient. Regular elections, peaceful transfers of power, and judicial review reinforce the legitimacy of institutions. In many ways, democracy in India is not merely a political structure but a lived experience shaped by diversity, public participation, and constant negotiation.
Federal system and state governments. India follows a federal system of governance, meaning that powers are constitutionally divided between the union government and the state governments. The Constitution of India clearly outlines this division through the Union List, the State List, and the Concurrent List. Matters such as defense, foreign affairs, and currency fall under the Union List, while public order, police, and agriculture are primarily under the State List. Subjects like education and forests are included in the Concurrent List, where both levels of government can legislate. India is often described as a union of states, reflecting both unity and diversity. There are currently 28 states and 8 union territories, each with its own administrative structure. Every state has a legislative assembly and some also have a legislative council. The chief minister heads the state government, while the governor, appointed by the President of India, acts as the constitutional head of the state. This federal structure allows states to frame policies suited to their local conditions, whether in areas such as healthcare, infrastructure, or social welfare. At the same time, fiscal transfers in centrally sponsored schemes ensure coordination between the center and the states. However, debates continue regarding the balance of power, especially in matters of revenue sharing and the use of central agencies. Despite occasional tensions, cooperative federalism remains a guiding principle in India's governance framework.
Nationalism and identity politics in India. Nationalism and identity politics have become powerful forces in contemporary India. Nationalism, in its broad sense, refers to a shared feeling of belonging to the nation and pride in its history, culture, and sovereignty. In India, this idea is shaped by the freedom struggle against colonial rule and by the country's rich civilizational heritage. However, India is also a deeply diverse society with multiple religions, languages, castes, and ethnic communities. Identity politics emerges when political mobilization takes place around these specific identities. Political parties may appeal to religious communities, regional groups, or caste-based constituencies to secure electoral support. This can strengthen representation for marginalized groups, but it can also create social polarization. Debates about nationalism often revolve around constitutional values such as secularism, pluralism, and unity in diversity. Some emphasize cultural nationalism and the protection of traditional values, while others stress inclusive citizenship and equal rights for all communities. Identity politics in India therefore reflects both democratic participation and social tension. It shows how citizens negotiate their multiple identities, local, regional, religious, and national, within the framework of a modern constitutional democracy. The ongoing dialogue between unity and diversity remains central to India's political landscape.
The role of the judiciary in India. In India, the judiciary is often described as the guardian of the constitution. Its primary role is to interpret laws, resolve disputes, and protect fundamental rights. At the top of the system is the Supreme Court of India, followed by high courts in each state and a wide network of lower courts. One key feature of the Indian judiciary is judicial review. This means courts can examine whether a law or a government action violates the constitution. If it does, the court can strike it down. This power strengthens the rule of law and acts as a check on the executive and the legislature. The judiciary also hears public interest litigation, often called PIL. Through PIL, citizens and civil society groups can bring issues of public importance such as pollution, corruption, or access to basic services before the courts, sometimes even without being directly affected. At the same time, the judiciary faces challenges, long case backlogs, delays, and concerns about access to justice, especially for poor and rural communities. Debates also arise about judicial activism when courts are seen as stepping into policy areas traditionally handled by elected governments. Overall, the judiciary plays a central role in balancing power, protecting rights, and maintaining constitutional governance in the world's largest democracy.
Media and the digital shift in Indian politics. In India, the media is often called the fourth pillar of democracy. It plays a vital role in informing citizens and shaping public debate. While freedom of speech is protected under the Constitution, it is not absolute. The law allows for reasonable restrictions regarding national security and public order. Traditionally, India has enjoyed a vibrant and diverse media landscape, with newspapers and TV channels reaching audiences in dozens of languages. However, the rise of social media has fundamentally changed how news spreads and how politics functions. Today, political leaders and parties use platforms like WhatsApp, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram to speak directly to voters, bypassing traditional gatekeepers like professional journalists and TV anchors. This digital shift has made political participation more immediate and inclusive, but it also brings significant challenges. The speed of social media often allows information to go viral before facts can be verified, leading to concerns about misinformation and hate speech. During elections, the influence of IT cells, teams dedicated to running coordinated social media campaigns, has become a major subject of debate. These groups can amplify specific narratives or slogans, sometimes contributing to social polarization. Furthermore, micro-targeting allows political ads to be tailored to specific users based on their location or interests. While this helps parties reach their audience, it can also create information silos where citizens only see news that matches their existing views. Overall, India's media space remains one of the most energetic in the world. The central challenge today is to protect the spirit of open debate while ensuring accountability and transparency in a highly connected digital age.
Foreign policy and India's global position. India's foreign policy is often described as strategic autonomy. Since independence, India has sought to maintain decision-making freedom while engaging actively with major powers and the global South. During the Cold War, this approach was reflected in the non-aligned movement. Today, it has evolved into a multi-alignment strategy, where India builds partnerships with diverse actors without entering rigid alliances. India plays an important role in multilateral forums such as the United Nations, the G20, BRICS, and the Quad. It advocates for reforms in global governance, especially the expansion of the UN Security Council to include developing countries. As a fast-growing economy and the world's most populous country, India presents itself as a voice of the global South, emphasizing development, climate justice, and equitable growth. Regional diplomacy remains central. Relations with neighboring countries in South Asia are guided by the Neighborhood First policy. At the same time, India strengthens ties with ASEAN, the European Union, the United States, and African nations through trade agreements, defense cooperation, and technology partnerships. Security concerns also shape foreign policy. Border management, maritime security in the Indian Ocean, and counter-terrorism cooperation are key priorities. India balances economic interests with strategic considerations, seeking both stability and influence in a rapidly changing international order.
India and its neighbors. India's relations with its neighbors are shaped by geography, history, and shared culture. As the largest country in South Asia, India borders Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, and maintains close maritime links with Sri Lanka and the Maldives. This strategic location gives India both opportunities and responsibilities in the region. With Pakistan, relations remain complex due to historical conflicts and security concerns. With China, border disputes and economic competition coexist with significant trade ties. At the same time, India promotes cooperation with smaller neighbors through development assistance, infrastructure projects, and energy partnerships. Under the Neighborhood First policy, India aims to strengthen regional connectivity and economic integration. Projects such as cross-border railways, power grids, and digital payment systems seek to improve everyday life across borders. India also plays an active role in regional organizations like SAARC and BIMSTEC, encouraging dialogue and collaboration. Cultural connections are equally important. Shared languages, religions, and traditions link India with Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. People-to-people exchanges, tourism, and educational scholarships deepen these ties. However, regional diplomacy requires careful balance. India must address security challenges, including border management and maritime safety, while maintaining trust and mutual respect. In a rapidly changing geopolitical environment, stable relations with neighbors remain central to India's foreign policy and long-term development.
India as an emerging power. In recent decades, India has increasingly been described as an emerging power. This does not mean that India has already reached the level of a superpower, but it suggests growing influence in the economy, diplomacy, and technology. One key factor is scale. India's large population, expanding middle class, and vast domestic market attract global business and investment. Economically, India has strengthened its position in services, especially IT and digital industries, while also pushing for manufacturing through initiatives such as Make in India. Startup ecosystems in cities like Bengaluru and Hyderabad support innovation, and digital public infrastructure, often discussed in policy circles, has accelerated payments and access to services. Politically, India presents itself as a stable constitutional democracy with regular elections and strong institutions, even as debates continue about governance and social cohesion. In foreign policy, India follows a multi-alignment approach. It builds partnerships with major powers without fully entering one exclusive bloc. Its role in forums like the G20, the Quad, and the UN peacekeeping tradition helps shape its global profile. Culturally, India's soft power is also growing. Indian cinema, cuisine, yoga, and a global diaspora create familiarity and influence abroad. Still, the emerging power label comes with challenges: inequality, infrastructure gaps, environmental stress, and regional security concerns. How India manages these issues will strongly affect its place in the world in the coming decades.
The Quad and Indo-Pacific geopolitics. In recent years, the Indo-Pacific region has become one of the most important areas in global geopolitics. Within this context, the Quad, a strategic partnership between India, Japan, the United States, and Australia, has gained attention as a framework for cooperation on security, trade, and regional stability. Although the group is not a formal military alliance, it reflects shared concerns about maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific. India plays a key role in the Quad because of its geographic position and growing economic and military power. Located between the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and East Asia, India is seen as an important partner in ensuring safe sea routes and balanced regional influence. The Indian Ocean, in particular, is critical for global trade, and India's Navy has become increasingly active in protecting maritime security. The Quad also focuses on non-military cooperation, including technology, infrastructure development, disaster relief, and supply chain resilience. These efforts aim to strengthen partnerships without creating direct confrontation. For India, participation in the Quad reflects its foreign policy strategy of maintaining independence while building strong international relations. India traditionally avoids formal alliances, but it also seeks cooperation to manage regional challenges. The development of the Quad shows how India is becoming a central player in Indo-Pacific geopolitics, balancing national interests with global responsibilities.
The Indian diaspora, a global influence. The Indian diaspora is one of the largest in the world, with more than 30 million people of Indian origin living outside India. These communities can be found in North America, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Over time, the Indian diaspora has become an important bridge between India and the rest of the world, contributing to economic growth, cultural exchange, and international cooperation. Many members of the diaspora moved abroad for education, employment, or business opportunities. In countries such as the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, people of Indian origin have achieved success in fields like technology, medicine, finance, and academia. Indian professionals are especially visible in the global IT industry, where engineers and entrepreneurs play key roles in innovation. The diaspora also has strong economic influence through remittances. Money sent back to families in India supports local communities and contributes billions of dollars to the national economy each year. In addition, overseas Indians often invest in Indian businesses and help create international partnerships. Culturally, the diaspora helps spread Indian traditions, food, language, and festivals around the world. Events such as Diwali celebrations are now held in many global cities. Today, the Indian diaspora represents not only migration but also connection, showing how people living abroad can strengthen both their new countries and their homeland.
India's soft power, from Bollywood to yoga. India's global influence is not based only on economic or military strength. Much of its international presence comes from soft power, the ability to attract and inspire other countries through culture, values, and ideas. India's soft power can be seen in many areas, including films, music, food, yoga, and traditional philosophy. One of the most visible examples is the film industry known as Bollywood. Indian movies are popular not only in South Asia but also in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and even Latin America. These films often combine music, dance, family drama, and romance, making them appealing to a wide audience. Through cinema, people around the world become familiar with Indian culture and social values. Yoga is another powerful symbol of India's soft power. Originating in ancient India, yoga has become a global practice for health and meditation. The United Nations even declared June 21 as International Day of Yoga, showing the worldwide acceptance of this tradition. Indian cuisine, classical music, and spiritual teachings also contribute to India's cultural influence. Restaurants, festivals, and cultural centers abroad help maintain connections between India and the global community. Through soft power, India strengthens its international image without force, showing how culture and ideas can shape global relationships.
Democracy under pressure. India is often praised as the world's largest democracy, with regular elections, a written constitution, and a vibrant political culture. Yet many Indians also ask a serious question: is democracy under pressure? In public discussions, people point to two competing realities. On one hand, elections are highly competitive, voter turnout is often strong, and political debate is everywhere, from parliament to tea stalls and WhatsApp groups. On the other hand, concerns have grown about polarization, the tone of public discourse, and the space available for dissent. One pressure point is the relationship between the state and independent institutions. Courts, election bodies, and watchdog agencies are expected to act impartially, but critics sometimes argue that appointments and enforcement can become politicized. Another pressure point is the media environment. India has energetic journalism and strong regional media, yet there are also debates about ownership, advertising pressure, and the rise of online misinformation. Social media amplifies voices, but it can also spread rumors quickly and reward outrage over nuance. At the same time, civil society remains active. Student groups, lawyers, local NGOs, and ordinary citizens use protests, petitions, and public interest litigation to push back and demand accountability. In India, democracy is not just a set of institutions, it is a daily contest over rights, narratives, and power. Whether it strengthens or weakens depends on how well trust, transparency, and rule of law are protected.
Governance and accountability. In India, governance refers not only to the functioning of government institutions but also to how power is exercised in public life. It includes policy making, service delivery, regulation, and the management of public resources. Accountability, in turn, ensures that those in authority remain answerable to citizens and to the Constitution. Together, governance and accountability form the backbone of a healthy democracy. At the national level, Parliament debates and passes laws, while the executive implements policies through ministries and departments. However, good governance is not measured only by legislation. It is reflected in how effectively welfare schemes reach beneficiaries, how transparently budgets are allocated, and how grievances are addressed. Digital initiatives such as Aadhaar-linked services and direct benefit transfer aim to reduce leakages and improve efficiency, though they also raise questions about data protection and privacy. Independent oversight institutions play a crucial role. The Comptroller and Auditor General audits government expenditure, the Election Commission supervises electoral processes, and the judiciary reviews executive and legislative actions. In addition, the Right to Information Act empowers citizens to demand transparency from public authorities. Civil society organizations, investigative journalists, and social movements further strengthen accountability by exposing irregularities and mobilizing public opinion. In recent years, debates around governance in India have focused on centralization of power, bureaucratic responsiveness, and the balance between national security and civil liberties. Ultimately, governance is not merely administrative, it is about trust. When institutions function transparently and fairly, citizens are more likely to participate actively and believe in the democratic system.
Overview of the Indian economy. The Indian economy is one of the fastest growing major economies in the world. Over the past 3 decades, India has transitioned from a largely state-controlled system to a more liberalized and market-oriented model. Economic reforms initiated in 1991 reduced trade barriers, encouraged foreign direct investment, and strengthened the private sector. Since then, India has emerged as a significant player in global services, manufacturing, and technology. Today, the economy is often described as a mixed economy, combining public sector enterprises with a dynamic private sector. The services sector contributes the largest share to GDP, particularly information technology, financial services, and telecommunications. Cities such as Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and Pune have become innovation hubs, attracting both domestic startups and multinational corporations. At the same time, agriculture continues to employ a large portion of the population, even though its share in GDP has gradually declined. Manufacturing initiatives such as Make in India aim to boost industrial production and create employment opportunities. Infrastructure development, ranging from highways and rail corridors to digital connectivity, has become a priority to sustain long-term growth. However, the economy also faces challenges, including income inequality, unemployment among youth, inflationary pressures, and regional disparities. The Reserve Bank of India plays a key role in maintaining monetary stability, while fiscal policy decisions influence public expenditure and taxation. In recent years, digital payments and fintech innovations have expanded financial inclusion, particularly in rural areas. Overall, India's economic trajectory reflects both ambition and complexity, balancing rapid growth with social equity and structural reforms.
Farmers and agricultural reforms. In India, agricultural reforms is a sensitive phrase because it touches everyday survival as well as identity. Many farmers operate on small land holdings, depend on seasonal rainfall, and sell their crops in markets where prices can swing sharply. When a reform proposal appears, people often ask a basic question: will it reduce risk for farmers or will it shift more risk onto them? Traditionally, a large part of trade has moved through regulated wholesale markets, often called mandis. In some states, farmers may sell to licensed traders, and certain crops can receive a floor price through the minimum support price system. Supporters argue that reform should widen choices, allowing farmers to sell beyond local markets, attract private investment in storage and cold chains, and reduce wastage. They also say contract farming, if designed well, can bring stable buyers and better planning. Critics, however, worry about bargaining power. If big buyers dominate, small farmers may face weaker prices, delayed payments, or complicated contracts. They also fear that public procurement could shrink over time, especially for staples, making farmers more exposed to market shocks. That is why the debate is not just technical, it is political and social, shaped by trust, past experiences, and regional differences. In practice, meaningful reform often means improving basics: transparent price information, faster dispute resolution, reliable weighing and grading, and stronger farmer-producer organizations so small farmers can negotiate together. When reforms focus on both markets and protections, they are more likely to be accepted.
Manufacturing and the Make in India strategy. When discussing India's industrialization, one must understand its two realities. On one hand, India has global-scale manufacturing in sectors like automobiles, pharmaceuticals, and electronics. On the other hand, a vast majority of workers remain in small, informal units, family workshops, or tiny factories where productivity and wages stay low. Bridging this gap is the primary goal of India's industrial policy. To address this, the Make in India initiative was launched in 2014. Its objective is to transform India into a global manufacturing hub by attracting foreign direct investment, FDI, and strengthening India's position in global value chains. By encouraging companies to manufacture within the country, the government aims to reduce import dependence and create jobs for the millions of young people entering the labor force each year. Under this policy, the government has introduced production-linked incentives (PLI) to boost output in key sectors like electronics and renewable energy. Efforts are also being made to improve the ease of doing business through digital approvals and the development of industrial corridors that link factories to ports and highways. However, practical obstacles remain. Moving from a service-led economy to a manufacturing powerhouse requires more than just incentives. Firms need reliable power, predictable regulations, and skilled workers who are trained in quality control and shop floor discipline. Furthermore, growth must be inclusive. If industry is only concentrated in a few urban clusters, regional disparities will widen. Ultimately, the success of India's industrial journey depends on building a resilient ecosystem, one that combines modern infrastructure with a skilled workforce to ensure that manufacturing growth benefits the entire population.
Middle class expansion. Over the past 3 decades, India has witnessed a significant expansion of its middle class. Economic liberalization in the 1990s opened markets, encouraged private enterprise, and attracted foreign investment. As a result, new jobs were created in sectors such as information technology, finance, retail, and telecommunications. For many urban families, stable salaries and rising consumption became symbols of upward mobility. The expanding middle class is often associated with greater access to higher education, home ownership, digital connectivity, and global exposure. English medium schooling and professional degrees are widely seen as pathways to secure employment. Consumer culture has also grown. Shopping malls, online platforms, and branded goods have become part of everyday life in many cities. At the same time, the middle class in India is diverse and not uniform. Income levels vary widely, and economic shocks, such as inflation or job losses, can quickly affect household stability. Moreover, aspirations are rising. Many young professionals seek not only financial security but also quality of life, work-life balance, and social recognition. In policy debates, the middle class plays an important role. It contributes significantly to tax revenue and often shapes public opinion through media and civic engagement. The story of India's middle class is therefore closely linked to the broader narrative of economic growth, social change, and democratic participation.
Indian Railways, the lifeline of the nation. Indian Railways is one of the largest railway networks in the world and is often called the lifeline of the nation. Every day, millions of passengers travel across the country using trains, making the railway system essential for transportation, trade, and social connection. With thousands of stations and tens of thousands of kilometers of track, the network links large cities, small towns, and remote villages. The railway system was first developed during the British colonial period, but after independence it expanded rapidly to support economic growth and national integration. Today, Indian Railways carries not only passengers but also huge amounts of goods, including food, fuel, and industrial materials. Because India has a very large population, trains are often crowded, yet they remain one of the most affordable ways to travel. Train journeys in India are also known for their unique culture. Long-distance travel may last many hours or even days, and passengers often share food, talk with strangers, and experience different languages and traditions along the way. For many people, the train is not only a means of transport but also a place of social interaction. In recent years, modernization projects have introduced faster trains, digital ticket systems, and improved safety. These changes aim to keep the railway system strong while meeting the needs of a growing nation. Indian Railways shows how transportation can connect people, support the economy, and create a shared national experience.
Highways and expressways, connecting a subcontinent. India is a vast country, and efficient transportation is essential for economic growth and national integration. In recent decades, the development of highways and expressways has transformed the way people and goods move across the subcontinent. Modern road networks now connect major cities, industrial centers, ports, and rural areas, making travel faster and trade more efficient. One of the most important projects is the Golden Quadrilateral, a highway system that links Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata. This network forms the backbone of India's road transportation and carries a large portion of the country's freight traffic. By reducing travel time, the highway system has helped businesses expand and has improved access to markets for farmers and small industries. Expressways have also changed daily life. In the past, long-distance travel by road could take many hours because of narrow roads and heavy traffic. Today, modern expressways allow faster and safer travel, supporting tourism, commerce, and regional development. Improved highways are especially important for logistics. Faster delivery of goods reduces costs and helps companies compete in the global economy. The government continues to invest in road construction, including smart highways and digital toll systems. The expansion of highways and expressways shows how infrastructure development can connect a diverse country and support both mobility and economic progress.
Rickshaws and taxis, navigating the last mile. In India, large transportation systems such as trains, buses, and highways move millions of people every day. However, reaching the final destination often depends on smaller forms of transport. This is known as the last mile, and in India, it is usually covered by rickshaws, taxis, and now ride-hailing apps. Auto rickshaws are one of the most common ways to travel short distances in cities. These three-wheeled vehicles are inexpensive, easy to find, and able to move through crowded streets where larger vehicles cannot go. In many towns, cycle rickshaws are still used, especially for very short trips. Taxis have also changed over time. In the past, passengers had to find taxis on the street or at stations, but today, many people use smartphone apps to book rides. Digital payment, GPS navigation, and online pricing have made travel more convenient and transparent. Ride-sharing services have become popular in big cities because they reduce waiting time and make transportation more reliable. At the same time, traditional drivers continue to play an important role, especially in smaller cities. Rickshaws and taxis may seem simple, but they are essential for daily life. They connect homes, offices, markets, and stations, making the last mile possible in one of the busiest countries in the world.
Bengaluru, the Silicon Valley of India. Bengaluru, also known as Bangalore, is often called the Silicon Valley of India because it is the center of the country's technology industry. Over the past few decades, the city has grown rapidly and has become home to major IT companies, research centers, and thousands of startups. Many global technology firms have offices in Bengaluru, making it one of the most important business cities in Asia. The growth of Bengaluru began in the late 20th century when the Indian government encouraged the development of the software and electronics industries. The city attracted skilled engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs from all over the country. Today, it is known for innovation, software development, and digital services. Bengaluru is also famous for its startup culture. Young entrepreneurs create new companies in areas such as artificial intelligence, finance technology, and online services. Investors from India and abroad support these businesses, helping the city become a global technology hub. At the same time, rapid growth has created challenges. Traffic congestion, rising housing costs, and pressure on infrastructure are serious issues for the city. However, Bengaluru continues to expand and remains a symbol of modern India's economic and technological future.
Fintech revolution beyond digital payments. India has experienced a major fintech revolution in recent years, changing the way people use money and financial services. In the past, millions of people in India did not have bank accounts, especially in rural areas. Because of this, it was difficult to save money safely, receive payments, or access loans. However, new financial technologies have made banking available to many more people. One of the key developments was the introduction of digital payment systems linked to mobile phones. With simple apps, users can send and receive money instantly without visiting a bank. Government programs that promoted digital identity and bank accounts also helped bring millions of citizens into the financial system. Fintech companies have expanded services beyond payments. Today, people can use mobile platforms for small loans, insurance, online shopping, and investment. These services are especially important for small businesses and workers who were previously outside the formal banking system. The fintech revolution has also increased transparency and reduced the use of cash, making the economy more efficient. At the same time, challenges such as data security and digital literacy remain. India's experience shows how technology can quickly transform financial access and create new opportunities for economic growth.
E-commerce, transforming the shopping experience. E-commerce has changed the way people shop in India, especially for the growing middle class. In the past, most shopping was done in local markets or small neighborhood stores. While these shops are still important, online shopping has become increasingly popular because it offers more choices, lower prices, and home delivery. Large e-commerce platforms such as Amazon and Flipkart have played a major role in this transformation. With smartphones and affordable internet access, millions of people can now buy products online, even in smaller cities and towns. Customers can compare prices, read reviews, and order goods without leaving their homes. E-commerce has also created new opportunities for businesses. Small sellers can reach customers across the country through online marketplaces, instead of depending only on local demand. Fast delivery services and digital payment systems have made online shopping more reliable and convenient. For the middle class, online shopping has become part of daily life. People buy clothes, electronics, groceries, and even medicines through mobile apps. Seasonal sales and discounts attract huge numbers of buyers every year. The growth of e-commerce shows how technology is changing consumer behavior and helping India move toward a modern digital economy.
The startup boom in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. In India, Startups were once concentrated mainly in large cities such as Bengaluru, Mumbai, and Delhi. However, in recent years, a startup boom has begun in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, which are smaller but rapidly developing urban areas. These cities are becoming new centers of innovation and entrepreneurship. One reason for this change is the spread of the internet and digital technology. With affordable smartphones and online services, people no longer need to live in major cities to start a business. Entrepreneurs in smaller cities can access customers, investors, and training through online platforms. Lower living costs also make these cities attractive for new companies. Rent, salaries, and office expenses are cheaper than in large metropolitan areas. Because of this, startups can operate with less money while still growing quickly. Local governments and national programs have also supported this trend by offering funding, training, and startup incubators. As a result, new businesses are appearing in fields such as education technology, agriculture technology, health services, and e-commerce. The rise of startups in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities shows that innovation in India is no longer limited to big cities. It is spreading across the country and creating new opportunities for economic growth and employment.
The rise of the metro, changing urban mobility. In many large Indian cities, metro rail systems are changing the way people travel every day. As urban populations grow, traffic congestion has become a serious problem. To solve this, modern metro networks have been built in cities such as Delhi, Bengaluru, Mumbai, and Hyderabad. These systems provide fast, reliable, and comfortable transportation for millions of commuters. The metro has changed daily commuting styles. In the past, many people depended on buses, auto rickshaws, or private vehicles, which often caused long travel times. With the metro, workers and students can reach offices and schools more quickly and on schedule. Air-conditioned trains and clean stations also offer a different travel experience compared with older forms of transport. Metro systems have also influenced public behavior. Passengers are expected to stand in line, allow others to exit first, and follow rules about safety and cleanliness. In this way, the metro is not only a transport system but also a place where new urban manners are learnt. The expansion of metro networks shows how India is modernizing its cities. By improving urban mobility, metro rail helps reduce traffic, save time, and support economic activity in growing metropolitan areas.
Swachh Bharat, the mission for a clean India. Swachh Bharat, which means Clean India, is a nationwide campaign launched to improve sanitation and public health across the country. For many years, lack of proper toilets, waste management, and clean streets caused serious health problems, especially in rural areas and crowded cities. The mission aims to change daily habits and build better infrastructure to create a cleaner environment. One of the main goals of the campaign is to provide toilets for every household. In the past, open defecation was common in some regions because many homes did not have private toilets. By building millions of toilets and promoting hygiene education, the government hopes to reduce disease and improve living conditions. The campaign also focuses on waste management and cleanliness in public spaces. Citizens are encouraged to keep streets, parks, and rivers clean. Schools, offices, and local communities often organize cleaning activities to raise awareness. Swachh Bharat is not only about sanitation but also about social change. It teaches people that public health depends on individual responsibility. Although challenges remain, the campaign has increased awareness and improved sanitation in many parts of India. The Clean India mission shows how national efforts can help create healthier cities, villages, and communities.
Waste management and recycling challenges. Waste management has become one of the biggest challenges in modern India, especially in large cities where the population is growing rapidly. Every day, millions of tons of garbage are produced from homes, markets, factories, and offices. Managing this waste safely is important for public health, the environment, and the quality of life in urban areas. In the past, much of the waste was simply dumped in landfills without proper separation. This caused pollution, bad smells, and health risks for nearby communities. Today, many cities are trying to improve recycling systems and reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfills. One important change is the separation of garbage into different categories, such as organic waste, plastic, and metal. When waste is sorted correctly, it can be recycled or reused more easily. Some cities have introduced rules that require households to separate their trash before collection. Innovation is also helping solve the problem. Startups and local organizations are developing new technologies for recycling, composting, and waste-to-energy systems. These solutions not only reduce pollution but also create jobs and support the circular economy. Although the challenge is still large, better waste management shows how technology, policy, and public awareness can work together to build cleaner and more sustainable cities.
Youth employment and the future of work. India is often celebrated for its demographic dividend, with millions of young people entering the labor market every year. This youthful population has the potential to drive massive economic growth. However, India faces a pressing challenge: youth unemployment. Despite a high number of graduates, there is often a sharp skill mismatch between academic degrees and actual industry requirements. This gap is being widened by rapid technological shifts. As automation and artificial intelligence expand across sectors, traditional routine tasks are increasingly handled by machines. This redefines the future of work, creating new opportunities in data analytics and cybersecurity, while making some traditional roles obsolete. Furthermore, the rise of the gig economy via digital platforms offers flexible income but often lacks long-term job security and social protection. To navigate these changes, India's primary focus is now on upskilling and reskilling its workforce. Transforming this massive population into a productive force is not just an economic necessity, it is a social imperative for the nation's long-term stability and global competitiveness.
Poverty, inequality, and the challenge of social mobility. In India, the story of economic growth is often described as two Indias. In one India, a fast-growing middle class enjoys high-rise apartments and global brands. In the other, millions still depend on informal work with uncertain income. This income inequality is not accidental. It is a structural issue rooted in historical gaps and uneven access to opportunities. Poverty here is more than just a lack of money. It is a lack of access to quality education, healthcare, and formal employment. This often creates a cycle where poverty is transmitted across generations. While the country's GDP has grown significantly, a person's birthplace, gender, or caste can still heavily influence their future. Social mobility, the ability to improve one's socio-economic status, remains the central challenge. While education is seen as the great equalizer, entrenched privilege and informal networks often decide who gets the best jobs. For growth to be truly meaningful, it must offer a fairer ladder for everyone. The real test of India's progress is whether its wealth translates into dignity, security, and real choices for every citizen, regardless of their background.
Urban slums and housing shortages. Urbanization in India has been both rapid and transformative. As millions migrate from rural areas to cities in search of employment and better living standards, metropolitan regions such as Mumbai, Delhi, and Bengaluru have expanded dramatically. However, this growth has also exposed a persistent challenge: urban slums and acute housing shortages. Slums, often referred to as informal settlements, emerge when formal housing supply fails to meet demand. Migrant workers and low-income families frequently cannot afford market rents or formal apartments. As a result, they construct makeshift dwellings on vacant land, near railway tracks, or along drainage channels. These settlements may lack basic amenities such as piped water, sanitation, waste management, and secure electricity connections. The housing deficit is not merely a question of numbers but also of affordability. Real estate prices in major cities have surged due to speculation, limited land availability, and high construction costs. Meanwhile, wage growth for the urban poor has not kept pace with rising living expenses. This mismatch deepens inequality and places pressure on public infrastructure. The Government of India has launched initiatives such as Housing for All and the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana to expand affordable housing. These schemes aim to provide subsidies, promote public-private partnerships, and regularize certain informal settlements. Yet implementation challenges remain, including bureaucratic delays, land disputes, and inadequate urban planning. Addressing urban housing requires integrated solutions: investment in mass transit, inclusive zoning policies, rental regulation, and sustainable city planning. As India continues its urban transition, ensuring dignified housing for all citizens will be crucial to achieving equitable and resilient development.
Food security and malnutrition. In India, food security is not only about producing enough grain, it is also about whether families can access nutritious food every day. The country runs some of the world's largest welfare schemes, such as the public distribution system, which supplies subsidized rice or wheat and midday meals in government schools. These programs help many households, especially during price shocks or job loss. However, malnutrition remains a serious concern. It can appear as undernutrition, children who are underweight or stunted, but also as hidden hunger, when diets lack iron, vitamins, or protein, even if calories are sufficient. In many regions, families rely heavily on cereals because they are cheaper and available through ration shops, while fruits, eggs, pulses, and milk can be too costly or irregular. Sanitation and healthcare also matter. Repeated infections, unsafe water, and poor maternal health can reduce how well the body absorbs nutrients. That is why policies increasingly talk about a nutrition-sensitive approach, improving local health services, promoting breastfeeding, and supporting kitchen gardens alongside food distribution. Today, India's challenge is to move from food quantity to food quality so that economic growth and public programs translate into healthier lives, especially for children and pregnant women.
Healthcare access and affordability. In India, healthcare access is closely linked to both geography and income. While major cities host advanced hospitals and specialist doctors, many rural districts struggle with shortages of medical staff and basic facilities. For millions of people, the first point of contact is a primary health center, which may face limited equipment, irregular electricity, or a high patient load. As a result, access to care can vary significantly depending on where one lives. Affordability is another major concern. A large share of healthcare spending in India is out of pocket, meaning families pay directly for consultations, medicines, and hospital stays. For low-income households, a single medical emergency can push them into debt. This is why public insurance schemes such as Ayushman Bharat have been introduced to provide financial protection for vulnerable populations. These programs aim to reduce catastrophic health expenditure and expand coverage for secondary and tertiary care. However, challenges remain. There are gaps between policy design and implementation, especially in remote or underserved regions. Urban-rural disparities persist, and private healthcare continues to play a dominant role in many areas. Improving healthcare access requires not only insurance coverage but also investment in public hospitals, trained personnel, preventive care, and digital health systems. Ultimately, affordable and accessible healthcare is essential for social equity and sustainable development, ensuring that economic progress translates into real improvements in people's lives.
Public health and sanitation. Public health in India is shaped not only by hospitals and doctors but also by everyday sanitation, clean water, toilets, waste management, and hygiene practices. In many cities, rapid urban growth has outpaced basic infrastructure. Informal settlements may lack reliable drainage, leading to stagnant water during the monsoon and a higher risk of mosquito-borne diseases. Meanwhile, in some rural areas, people still face challenges in accessing safe drinking water, especially in dry seasons. Sanitation has improved in recent years through large-scale government drives, including campaigns to expand household toilets and encourage behavior change. Yet, public health outcomes depend on more than construction. Toilets must be usable and maintained, water supply must be regular, and waste must be collected and treated properly. Otherwise, open dumping and polluted rivers continue to affect communities downstream. Another key issue is solid waste and plastic. Street vendors and small shops often rely on disposable packaging, and local bodies struggle to segregate waste at source. When waste is not separated, recycling becomes harder and landfills grow quickly. Public health and sanitation are also about dignity and safety, particularly for women and children. Improvements require coordination between municipal services, public awareness, and local participation. In India's policy language, sanitation is increasingly seen as preventive healthcare. When communities invest in cleanliness, they reduce disease burden and protect productivity.
Violence against women. Violence against women in India is widely recognized as a serious social and governance challenge. It includes domestic violence, sexual harassment, trafficking, and other forms of abuse that affect women across regions, classes, and communities. Over the past decade, public awareness has increased significantly, especially after high-profile cases that led to nationwide protests and stronger legal reforms. India has enacted stricter criminal laws, fast-track courts, and helplines to support survivors. The Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act and amendments to criminal law have expanded definitions of assault and improved procedures for reporting. However, implementation remains uneven. Social stigma, fear of retaliation, and lack of economic independence often prevent victims from seeking justice. In rural areas, limited access to police stations, legal aid, and medical facilities can delay support. At the policy level, the issue is framed not only as a law and order matter, but as a question of social transformation. Government programs focus on awareness campaigns, gender sensitization in schools, and community engagement. Civil society organizations, self-help groups, and local administrations also play an important role. Ultimately, addressing violence against women requires legal enforcement, institutional accountability, and a shift in social attitudes. It is closely linked to dignity, equality, and India's broader commitment to inclusive development.
Child marriage. Child marriage remains a significant social concern in parts of India, particularly in rural and economically vulnerable communities. Although the legal minimum age of marriage is 18 for women and 21 for men, early marriages continue due to poverty, social pressure, and deeply rooted cultural practices. In some regions, families believe that marrying daughters at a young age protects their honor and reduces financial burden. Over the years, the Government of India has introduced laws such as the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act to prevent underage marriages and punish those who facilitate them. Awareness campaigns, school retention programs for girls, and financial incentives for continued education have also been implemented. Data shows gradual improvement with declining rates in many states, yet the problem persists in certain districts. Child marriage often leads to interrupted education, limited economic opportunities, and higher health risks, especially for young mothers. Early pregnancy can result in complications due to physical and emotional immaturity. Therefore, policymakers increasingly frame the issue not only as a legal violation but as a development challenge linked to gender equality and human rights. Civil society groups, community leaders, and women's collectives play a key role in changing social norms. Empowering girls through education, skill training, and awareness about rights is considered essential. Reducing child marriage ultimately requires coordinated efforts across governance, education, healthcare, and community engagement to ensure that young people can make informed and voluntary life choices.